Hey guys, so I hope you're having a great day. The idea for today is just a review for your test on Tuesday. We've got the discriminant that we talked about last class right here. So that was the b squared minus 4ac. That's the discriminant. All right, that is b squared minus 4ac. Right? And remember, that is what is underneath the radical in the quadratic formula. And so if that's a positive number, right, if you have the square root of a positive number, then you're going to have 2, right, because it's going to be plus or minus that positive number. You're going to have 2 real roots, which is the same. Roots are solutions. All right. And if that is 0, then what you have is plus or minus the square root of 0. Well, that is just 0, so you're not adding anything. So you end up with one rational, because there's no square root. Rational just means you have a fraction solution. And then if it's negative, that means you have plus or minus the square root of a negative number. And so remember, that means you're going to have an I, right? The square root of -1 equals I. So that means you're going to have 2 imaginary solutions. All right, so solving by the square roots method, all right, we're going to focus in on what it tells you to do. All right, we're using the square root method. So that means I'm going to look at, it's quadratic, and so I'm going to get rid of that squared. So I'm going to square root this side, and I'm going to square root this side. All right, these are inverses, so that makes that go away. And so what I have is what's underneath, x plus 3 equals, and if you do the square root of 16, you get 4. All right, but notice it's plus or minus 4, right? Because I have 2 solutions. So I also have x plus 3 could equal -4. All right, because if I go back and look at my original equation, right, if I take a number and I square it, I'm always going to get a positive. So that number, if I take 4 squared, that's going to be 16. If I take -4 squared, that's going to give me 16. So I have my two equations here, and then I just solve them. Oops, I need to get my pen. All right, so I have plus, all right, x plus 3 equals 4. So I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides. And so I get x equals 4 minus 3 is 1. That's one solution. Subtract 3 from both sides, so I get x equals -7 is my other solution. That's using the square root method. I just square rooted both sides because I did it, b was equal to 0. All right, so now I'm going to do this one. Again, it's square roots method. So here is, again, b equals 0, right? I have, there's no x, there's an x squared, and there's 36, but there's no x to the first power. So b is equal to 0. So I'm going to get my numbers on one side. So I have 3x squared equals 36. And I'm going to divide by 3. All right, that goes away. So then I have x squared equals 12. All right, now I do my square root method, right? I'm trying to get x squared, x. I don't want x squared, so I'm going to square root that. Have to do the same thing to the other side. That cancels out with that. So I get x equals the square root of 12. Okay, now that is an irrational number. It comes out to a decimal that doesn't repeat. So I'm going to go, I've got to simplify it. That's my answer, but I've got to find the factors that are perfect squares. So I'm going to do this in Desmos. I'm going to do y equals 12 divided by x squared. All right, and then I'm going to click on the gear so I can look at the table. All right, and I'm going to find the biggest number that is not a decimal. Okay, and notice I've got like 1 times 12, and so on. So then now when I get 2, the next one would be 2 and a 3. All right, and then I get decimals. So the 2, that means the 2 comes out and the 3 stays underneath. And it's plus or minus the square root of 2 because I have 2 radical 3, right? You always have 2 solutions. I'll highlight my solutions. So there's 1, 2, and then since I have the plus or minus, that gives me 2 solutions there. These would be irrational because I've got that radical 3. All right, so I'm going to keep going with my square root method. Square root this side, square root this side. So that cancels out with that, and I get x minus 1 equals 5. But it could also equal, oops, can equal negative 5. All right, so now I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So that goes away, and I get x equals 5 plus 1 is 6. And then I'm going to add 1 here, add 1 here. So I get x equals negative 4 plus 1 is, or excuse me, negative 5 plus 1. And those are my 2 solutions. X equals 6, x equals negative 4. All right, now coming over here, got to get the x squared by itself, so I'm going to add 32 to both sides. And then I get 2x squared equals 32. All right, divide by 2. And I get x squared equals 16. All right, but I want x by itself. So the inverse of x squared is the square root. So now I've got x equals, and it's going to be plus or minus 4. Square root of 16 is 4. So that is using the square root method. All right, and you can do that when b is equal to 0. All right, now we're going to use the quadratic formula. All right, so get ready to do some substitution here. So the quadratic formula is x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, and then now I'm going to substitute in. So I've got a equals 1, right? A is going to be, right, that's A. This is going to be my B, negative 2. And my C is going to be negative 5. All right, so let's do our substitution here. So I've got x equals minus, or the opposite of b, well, b was negative 2. All right, first step is better just to substitute in. And then b, and I'm going to square it, so I'm going to take negative 2, square it, minus 4, and then times a, which is 1, times c, which is -5. And that is all over 2 times a, which is 1. All right, so I've got my formula. I substitute in my a, b, and c. And then now I'm going to simplify. So the opposite of -2 is +2. Plus or minus square root. And then now I'm going to put this in my discriminant, right? This is the discriminant. What is underneath b squared minus 4ac? That's my discriminant. So I'm going to put that into Desmos and get my answer there, all right? So I get that is going to be 24. And then 2 times 1 is 2. All right. So now I've just got to keep simplifying. So I've got x equals 2 plus or minus. Now remember to simplify a radical. Well, first of all, if it is, put it in Desmos and see if it comes out to be a nice perfect square, but it's not. All right. So I get a decimal. So what I've got to do is go into Desmos and do y equals 24 divided by x squared, so I can find the perfect squares that are factors. All right, and I'm going to end up with 2 square root of 6. All right, when I look at the table, all right, you're going to look at the table and you'll see you've got 2 and 6. And then that is all over 2. All right. And then now you still have to one more simplification here. I could say x equals, and it's kind of like we did with the when we had the GCD, we were dividing out when we were factoring, right? I've got 2 divided by 2 is going to be 1. And then now I'm going to do, I've got plus or minus, and then I'm going to take 2.6 divided by 2. So these 2's cancel out. So all that is left, right, this 2 cancels out with that 2. So all that is left is the square root of 6. All right. So this 2 canceled out with this 2, and I got a 1. This canceled out, and so I end up with 1 plus or minus the square root of 6. Those are my 2 answers. 1 plus the square root of 6 and 1 minus the square root of 6. All right, and now that is the final solution there. All right, number 7 is the same thing. All right, I've got A is 2, B is 7, and C is 3. All right, so I'm going to substitute in here. I'm going to say x equals the opposite of b, so 7, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that's 7 squared. Oop, not plus, it's minus. 7 squared minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. All right, so then I've got x equals minus 7 plus or minus the square root, and then I'm going to put this into Desmos. All right, type that whole thing in there. And then I've got, let's see, 49 minus, is that 31? Oh, minus 24. So there, that gives me 25 when you put that into Desmos, and then 2 times 2 is 4. And so now I've got x equals minus 7 plus or minus, and then you do the square root of 25 is 5, and that's all over 4. So now I've got x equals, and it's negative 7 plus 5 all over 4. And then x equals negative 7 minus 5 all over 4. All right, and when you do this, you get negative 1/2. And when you do this one, you get negative 3. All right, and so those are your two solutions. All right, x equals negative 1/2, and x equals negative 3. All right, so you need to be able to do the quadratic formula, solve by square roots, and then the last thing you need to be able to do here is solve by factoring. So if I'm going to factor, I'm going to do the x-band, right? So I've got 1 times 24 is 24. Negative 10 is my b. Put that into Desmos, right? You're going to do y equals 24 divided by x to get the factors of 24. And then you want those factors to add up to be negative 10. All right, so that would be negative 4 and negative 6, right, where they intersect. And then you're going to take this trinomial and write it as 4 terms. So I'm going to bring down the x squared, and then I'm going to do minus 4x minus 6x, and then bring down the plus 24. And then I've got my GCD. They both have an x. And here, if I do GCD of 6 and 24, I get 6. And then this is negative right here. Be really careful with your signs. That's negative, so that's negative. Okay. And then now what I'm going to do is bring the GCD into the front. So x comes in front. Then I'm going to divide, right? So I'm going to take right, x squared divided by x gives me x. Okay, and then I'm going to divide here. Negative 4x divided by x is going to give me a negative 4. And then now I've got my, bring the minus 6 in the front. And then I'm dividing again. All right, divide these. So the negative 6's divide out, so what's left is x. And then now I'm dividing here. 24 divided by negative 6 is going to be my minus 4. And that is good because right here's my common factor here. Right, I've got x minus 4 and x minus 4, so that comes to the front. So x minus 4. And when I divide that out, what's left is x minus 6. And then that equals 0. So that's factoring. Now what I have to do, because I'm actually solving, right? I am not just factoring, I'm actually solving. So what I'm going to do is set each one of these equal to 0. So either x minus 4 equals 0 or x minus 6 equals 0. Right, my zero product property. So if I add 4 here to both sides, I get x equals 4. And if I add 6 here to both sides, I get x equals 6. And those are my two solutions. or zeros. And that's why they're called zeros, because you're setting it equal to 0. And then here I've got, I'm just going to factor again, so I'm going to do the x-min. All right, a is 1, so that would be 1 times 36 is 36. B is 12. All right, put that, do this in Desmos, right? Y equals 36 divided by x to get the factors. And then x plus y equals 12. And so that would be, what is, oh, 6 and 6. All right, so then I've got x squared, bring down the first one, plus 6x plus 6x plus 36 equals 0. Greatest common factor is x. GCD is 6. X comes in front. X plus 6 comes in front. And then I've got x plus 6 again. X plus 6 comes in front. That's my GCD. And that leaves me with x plus 6. All right. And so this means I've got x plus 6, but they're both the same. So you could write that actually as x plus 6 squared equals 0. Square root it. X plus 6 equals 0. So I'm going to minus 6, so x equals negative 6. And that is my solution. And what we're going to do is we would call that a double root. All right, so now I think we are still solving these by factoring. Yeah, solve by factoring. So you're going to solve these by factoring. This is just going to be the x-man here. Oops, oh dear. All right, so we're going to go like this. So I'm going to go 2 times negative 24, so that would be negative 48. All right, B is negative 13. And then you're going to do just what we did before. All right. Let's see, that would be negative 16 and 3. So we'll have 2x squared minus 16x plus 3x minus 24 equals 0. GCD. Okay, they both have a factor of 2x. These both have a factor of 3. 2x comes in front, divide it out. Oops, minus. Divide that out. Okay, the x minus 8 is going to come in front. And then you've got 2x plus 3. All right, now since you're solving these, you have to set each of these equal to 0. So I'm going to say x minus 8 equals 0, or 2x plus 3 equals 0. And I get x equals 8 is one solution. And x equals negative 3/2. All right, there's one solution and the other one. All right, those are the x values that's going to make this equal to 0. Okay, so these would be the same. Now notice if you just have two terms here, sometimes that kind of throws people off. You just look for the GCD here first. So it would be 2, and then they both have an x. And so you're going to factor out the 2x in front. Divide this so you get x minus 16. All right, and so you set each of these equal to 0. So you have 2x equals 0, or x minus 16 equals 0. Divide out the 2, so x equals 0. Actually, an x is a separate factor, so you could say, well, 2 can't be a 0, but x could equal 0, and then this could equal 0. So you think of it that way too. So x equals 16. So those are my two solutions there. All right, so same thing here. You would do the GCD for an x. So the 4x comes out front, divide it out, and so I get x plus 2 equals 0. All right, so 4 can't be 0, but x could equal 0, or x plus 2 equals 0. So minus 2, so x equals negative 2. All right, and those are my two solutions here. X equals 0, x equals negative 2. Awesome. So now if we sketch a graph, if we have a linear function, that means we have a line, right? So a linear function is going to be a line. All right, if you have two real solutions, that means you have to cross the x-axis twice. Maybe I will make that one. Maybe I'll make these actual lines. All right, so here's a line, the constant slope, that is a linear function. Quadratic means it is that parabola shape. And if it has two real solutions, right, two real solutions, that means it crosses the axis twice. All right. If it is quadratic with two imaginary solutions, that means it does not cross the x-axis at all. All right, and if it's a quadratic with one real root, that means it like bounces off. It only touches the x-axis at one single point. Okay, that would be one real root. All right, and that's all you need to be able to do for the test next Tuesday. Quadratic formula and solve by factoring. Okay, and then understand that the zeros, the solutions are the x-intercepts, right? That's an x-intercept. All right, so where it crosses the x-axis, those are the solutions. All right, so if it's linear, that's like y equals x, so that's like to the first power, so that means there's only one solution, right? It only crosses one time. There's only one x-intercept. Okay, one real root means you have this. All right. And remember, imaginary solutions are the ones with I, like 2I, plus or minus 2I, something like that. All right, have a great weekend. Try to finish up your math spaces, and you can also try to finish up the notes on quadratic formulas that we almost finished last class. Bye.